I'm Nicole Jelly, and I'm the Executive Director of the Talent Pool. Some of you may know that we are an offshoot of the HR Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, and we're 11 years old. And we are extremely fortunate to have a great partner that is here today, which is the HRIA. And so thank you, Jeff. Take our thanks back to the organization for being so supportive during 2014. This closes actually our HR Agility series of this year. And we started it with Yvonne back in March, and we're closing it with Yvonne in December. So thank you very much for that. The session today is really an offshoot of various conversations that started between Yvonne and myself and then with Blake. And I think that, you know, synchronicity has a funny way of delivering things, because as we started talking about what does sustainability means, conversations were way before the price of oil decided to tank. So we started talking about it from various perspectives, and now, of course, it does have a lot of very relevant applications. So we're not going to take much time. It's a small group. I know you will be engaging in various conversations with our speakers, and somebody's at the door.
Perfect.
Welcome, Lisa. Sorry, just take 2 seconds, take your time. What we're looking for is an understanding that sustainability means various things. And so I know that both Yvonne and Blake are going to take you down some interesting thinking paths, and it's not necessarily the usual ones. So I really feel awkward having to introduce Yvonne, because I know that most of you, if not all of you, know of her and know her. But I've been very fortunate to connect with Yvonne, as I said, earlier in the year. And as you know, she is an accomplished HR professional, CHRP, but most importantly, she changes lives through her coaching practice. And so to have Yvonne be part of this is really a rare privilege. She just recently published in a book, a very, very interesting chapter, and I will let Yvonne speak to that herself, but certainly encourage you all to look it up and to acquire that piece of very seminal information. She is a past HR director, International Coach Federation board member, and you must know her 2 coaching consulting companies. One of them, The Shattered Ceiling, captured my imagination with that title, that name, and the other one is Leveraged Leadership. Together with Yvonne, we're very fortunate to have Blake Fleming. Blake and I met as part of a panel on governance at Haskayne, and Blake comes from an extensive background of senior executive positions in the oil and gas industry in Calgary. Too many to enumerate, but if someone can really speak to the situation at the moment, I think you'll find that person is Blake. He is a sessional lecturer at Haskayne on corporate governance. So we're looking at sustainability and governance at a very interesting moment in time. And without any further ado, I will pass it on to Yvonne. Feel free, coffee, breakfast, you need to stand up, we're at home. Make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
And I will be taking pictures, so I hope it's okay.
Thank you, Nicole, for the warm introduction.
It's always nice to see a group of smiling faces, although there was a few frowns coming in this morning about the traffic. Thank goodness it's not minus 35, that's all I have to say. I have a white car, so it was brown by the time I got here, but I did manage to get here a little early, so thank you for taking the time out this morning. My colleague Blake and I are intending to provide a lot of valuable information with some real-life strategies and opportunities to take some information back, really that is going to look at not sustainability from the traditional perspective, perhaps, thinking about the environment and thinking about that piece, so much as how do our HR practices, how do our management and leadership styles impact the sustainability of our business. So we're going to look at it from a slightly different angle. And we're not going to talk about the price of oil, because as Nicole said, this was booked a long, long time ago. So for today, see if I can stay out of your way there. Maybe I'll put that over here. There. This is what we're going to focus on. So we're going to look at leadership for today's what I call an uncertain economy. Is that an apt descriptor, do you think? Leveraging your staff, increasing profitability through your staff, looking at employee engagement and how that connects with efficiency. And then Blake is going to be talking primarily about components of sustainability, which are really key to the success of organizations. So that's our agenda. Everybody in the right place? Nobody's running out the door? This is good? Okay. So, the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, that's very often what people think about when they think about sustainability, environmental, social, economic, where that comes together. We're not really talking about the environmental, we're talking more about the social piece and how it connects to the economic piece. So that's our focus for today. We're going to look at quite a bit of data. And Nicole has kindly put in one of the reports in your blue folders there, so you can take that away and read it in great detail. But the other pieces of data that we're drawing on is from CCL, Center for Creative Leadership. I think most people are familiar with that group. There's a lot of extensive research. Daniel Pink, who's read Drive? Daniel Pink book. Okay, and if you haven't and you want a short version, I have a 3-page book review. Just leave me a card and I'll be happy to email it to you. A lot of scientific data in that about what he calls the surprising truth about what really motivates us. Chamber of Commerce and talent pool data, obviously, drawing in some of the data from the HRIA, partner for the talent pool. And some of the questions that I see and hear from my clients in coaching conversations and what they're struggling with. And I did a similar type of presentation a few weeks ago for the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce. So I did get a feel for what some of their issues were. Some of those are smaller business owners perhaps than what we have in the group here. But again, a lot of the same things kept coming up over and over again. So I also asked one of my global coach colleagues to get her perspective from some C-suite conversations that she's having. And then I also put a posting up on LinkedIn just to ask, in the Harvard group, just to ask what they were seeing in terms of issues. So this is the collective compiled, we can only cover 4 trends really in the time that we have together. So we're going to probably share quite a lot of information in a short period of time. So feel free to make notes on your handouts. We can either do questions as we go or questions at the end. Any preference? No? Okay. All right, we'll see how it goes. So let's get started then. So I'm interested in hearing about what you find frustrating. So you have some colored Post-it notes on your tables. What I'd like you to do is individually, just take a moment, couple of minutes to put bullet points down. 3 most frustrating trends that you find as an individual, and then we'll spend just 5 minutes at the table with your colleagues, new friends that you've just made, talking just a little bit about, what is your business purpose? Again, should be 1-line statement that we should be able to encapsulate the purpose of the business, and then see if you can identify 3 common trends out of your collective trends that you've identified initially for yourself. Let's see if there's some overlap, and then we'll do a collective pickup in a few minutes. So start off with your own, then collaborate, and then we'll talk about it in a moment. Everyone good? Okay,
Go.
This is normally where I put the music on, but we don't have music today, so.
Just on the trends, are you talking specifically around
What?
people management?
Frustrating trends.
So it could be anything.
It could be what you find as leaders, what you see as frustrating trends, and we'll see if we can weave some of those into what we've already prepared. And I will be collecting the Post-its afterwards, so that's why just the bullet points works. No flipping forward and looking at the handouts, because that's what I call cheating. Okay, so everybody should have their own individual 3 bullets down. Usually people have no trouble identifying what's frustrating them, especially by the time we get to Thursday. So in your small tables, let's have a brief discussion, see if there's some overlap between what you have and what some of your colleagues have. 5 minutes.
We're seeing a lot of stress, a lot more stress in engineering. We do that in different areas of the work, like environmental projects. It's just better there's only a medication for it. Yeah, more and more frustrating.
For whatever reason, much busier, even though the technology process is busy. But when you get to work in my life or whatever, very much now, whereas before, so I don't think you just go and see what's on here. And I think people, I'm not saying that one way or the other, but just shut off. I think their ability, and I also think the way people are raised is very different. So your generation, my generation, I was raised very strictly, and that's fine. Nobody don't mind when I was with now there's all good areas, but I think raising a child, you're used to raising a child, and then all of a sudden, you have a performance group. I mean, how can you look at one negative thing and then performance raising but the rest of the house is still yours out. So, really, I don't know.
Oh,
You know, or something in the sense of yeah. And that gives it
Another minute maybe to wrap up?
Yeah, so.
Okay, if I can bring everybody back. Sounds like some interesting conversation happening. And hopefully we'll exchange cards as well, so if you'd like to carry on that conversation afterwards, you now have a new colleague to bounce different ideas off. So I'm interested to hear a little bit of what's bubbled up and to see if there are 3 trends from each table perhaps that overlap. So can I start over here? I don't know who wants to speak, but...
We didn't finish.
We were just
2 out of 3.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, did you find any common
Yeah.
themes?
So far, the stress between generations.
Stress
So there's
between
still-
generations?
Still sort of a failure to integrate / adapt to Generation Y and even the incoming Generation Z.
Okay, the youngsters. Yeah, okay, interesting. How about over here?
Well, actually, not necessarily with the intermixing of the generations, but we were talking about the new generation being, it's a new thing that they're not as committed. Or they're committed in a different way, so they wouldn't mind resigning from their job and take their chances of getting another job just so that they can travel for a couple of months. And that has never really happened before. So another thing we both sort of notice is maybe mental health issues and ability to cope with stress is becoming an issue.
Yeah, it's actually doubled. There's some reporting that's saying that stress in the workplace has doubled in the last 4 years. Yes, interesting.
Wow. Well, I completely did different stuff than my colleague here.
Okay.
I felt that frustrating trends is that we have a lot of students who couldn't get jobs when they got their bachelor's, went back to school, got their master's, and they're coming out of educational institutions without any work experience. Unless it's in a service industry. I think CDC did a very good report on jobless generation.
Right.
So for me, that was one of them. And then Tina brought up the mental health issue that you just talked about.
Yeah, we talked about the mental health issue, and not just that it's present, but it's such a gray area, and so it's one of those things that's, you kind of have to take at face value. I mean, some people really have that need and have that need for stress leave and things like that, but others can go to their doctor and get a note and not necessarily have that need.
Right.
But so it's kind of that gray area.
Yeah.
And also, in terms of recruitment and retention, the labor market, I particularly am frustrated with the changes to the foreign worker program.
Alrighty, talk to Nicole. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Certainly, when it comes to long-term disability and leaves around burnout, to just sort of encapsulate mental health in one way, those things take longer to heal than a physical disability. So there's some huge costs. I think that's for 76,000. 10% perhaps of the company's bottom line could go towards those costs. How about here?
We're from the same company, so.
Yeah, I wondered if you could get up and move around, but that's okay.
Didn't. Some of the things that we found were similar, and we're an IT consulting agency that works with people who, all of our employees have autism. So in some of the things that we're finding are not autism related, they are generational. Issues and things like motivation or wanting change or not coming into work as much as we thought they would be and things like that. We do find that some of the businesses that we deal with court us a lot, but commitment is difficult, or they expect disability equals discount, which is not fair. And a lot of change. There's so much change, like almost daily when I walk into a business that employs one of our consultants, it's like, now there's a new supervisor, now there's new seating arrangements, like everything's always changing, which is great in a lot of ways, but for our employees can be really difficult.
Yes.
So we're finding it as a bit of a stall.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And if I can just share for a moment, if that's okay. I have a disabled son who's a special needs child. He's now 19, and so I really appreciate programs that support anyone that doesn't have a full work style capacity in the regular way. So thank you very much for digging into that. And I know there's some other groups that have some programs that support in different ways as well. So, well, interesting. Not to say that this is the wrong presentation, because I think there's a lot of elements in here that touch on the things and connect to the things that you've brought up. But if we don't cover it today, the nice thing about these Post-it notes is I'll collect them at the end, and then that'll be programming for Nicole for 2015. Okay? So I'm at the age now where I'm getting hot a lot. So I'm just going to take that off now and let you know if I start doing this. I can't take anything else off. All right, so let's dive in. So trend one, we are living in a networked market. So a network market, social media is prevalent. So when social media connects with happily engaged employees, it's great. But when they're upset about something, and particularly we're talking about young generations, when they are upset about something, they don't just quietly take that now, particularly with all the focus recently on bullying and things like that. They go to social media and they garner support in waves. So we can leverage that, but it is a trend to pay attention to, and it's frustrating. We also have that generational element, so the younger generation are much more tuned in to how to leverage social media for their own advantage. Look at how popular Justin Bieber became with one YouTube video, right? So the ease of communications is there to make that reputation management an issue. So looking at some of the McKinsey data, reputation management was on one of the top 3 focus areas for CEOs. So it's on the radar, and they were thinking about how reputation management connects to sustainability from a customer perspective. When somebody was talking about attracting new customers. Having a strong purpose, having committed and engaged employees that are going to be welcoming for new customers, all connects to the reputation. So reputation management is a key piece. We know that in the news, I don't know if you recognize this gal, Caitlin Pragtahaki, who was the gal that refused to be bullied in silence and then took it up to the Post-it note campaign. Positive Post-it note day is now a common theme in many cities. And then on the flip side, I thought about an article recently in The Sun where it was a hockey player of a certain skin color that got identified, and very quickly in The Sun there was an apology published about that. Bill Cosby, we don't really know how that's going to go, but just look at what's happened with raising awareness of things that might be impacting his reputation and how quickly the media has chewed on that. I'm used to having my laptop right there. So let's look at some data. So McKinsey, sustainability data. The alignment with the company's business vision, mission, and values, 43% was the scoring there. And this is actually, just to get my numbers right, done by McKinsey. They've been around since 1926, if you're not familiar with them. And they took 1,946 executives worldwide to do this survey. So 50% of the executives considered sustainability issues. However, very, very important, however, only 30% of these executives were actually investing money into sustainability activities or programs. So already we've got a disconnect there. And then 36% was saying, reputation is the key piece. So those are 2 of the things that we're going to talk about quite a bit today, more so than the cost cutting, because I think that will probably come in conversation in the next few weeks anyway. So McKinsey identified some organizational specific practices. So they've identified 4, and it's more detailed in the reports that you have in your slide pack. Deeply integrated was the first piece. So this is really looking at the reputation of the organization and how it connects with empowering employees, so having that strong line of sight with what the purpose of the organization is, and really being able to draw out innovation. Because when employees are engaged, fully engaged, that's when you're going to get the extra discretionary effort, and they're going to be willing to share their ideas. If they're stressed, if they're burned out, if they're disengaged, they're just going to come and do the basic job. They're not going to give you the extra. And that's where the missing value is, because that's where we can really have an impact on profitability when we get innovative new products coming in. And so high empowerment. Execution focused. So this is more typically, excuse me, at that middle level, because that's where your middle managers are having more impact. Alignment with the mission and the roles, looking at very strong criteria for performance and how we build the skills to be in a sustainable environment. So execution focused, leader supported, speaks almost for itself. So it's about developing high levels of accountability against those sustainability measures and practices. And then the last one, we're not really going to look at this because that's more externally oriented towards stakeholder demands. So those are the 4 categories that they identified, organizational specific practices. And there's a lot more detail in the report. Second one, pace of change. Now when I did this on my computer, it went I don't have sound apparently. So let's look. So it's because of the pace of change, which was brought up on one of the back tables there, we do have now a much stronger need for what I'm calling, and industry is referring to as agile leadership. So who's ever got a wake-up call in the morning, they go in, their mailbox has got 120 messages already. What do you start doing? Are you reading them all? Skimming, right? And I actually have a client who says, don't send me anything longer than the 3-paragraph email. I will read the top line, the bottom line, and I won't read the middle. So whatever you want, make sure it's in the top or the bottom. Now I know, but as leaders, I think that we're missing that caring piece of dealing with our employees if we don't understand what their real issue is by having the time, making the time to go through. So as leaders, we're acting more on, instead of that linear decision-making process, the left-brain thinking, we're having to move into right-brain thinking. So we're having to lead from the heart, use our intuition, care and show trust, show role modeling, show balance in our work life, and be agile leaders. And so that's where things like emotional intelligence comes in. Knowing how you show up as a leader can be particularly helpful, using intuition. On the technology front, who's a gynecologist, a stockbroker, or what's the other one? Heart surgeon. Nobody here, okay. So really, when you think about technology, yes, it can support your business. Sometimes it can be a first-to-market advantage. But do you really need the latest iPhone the minute it comes out? Because that creates turmoil, change. Change distracts people. Change saturation, I hear that a lot with my clients because there's too much change going on in different pockets of the organization and there's no central project management office coordinating it, and so people get oversaturated with change. And every time you make a change, you get a dip in productivity before you see the end efficiency returns. And in fact, there's a study done, Bain and Kopelman, I don't know if you're familiar with that study, excuse me, done a while ago, but it was a group of managers that went on a training course and they measured the efficiency difference after the training course of 26%. Sounds pretty good, right, for return on investment on training. But when they added coaching to it, it went up to 88%. So why would you not add coaching to any training to help embed the concepts afterwards? So technology is, pace of change is crazy. We are living in a global context, we can't ignore that, but let's leverage technology if we can when we're working in different time zones, whether it's using smart boards, use it effectively, and let's appreciate those generational expectations because the kids today, they are used to getting everything quickly. Whose kids here have a credit card? Probably took them 5 minutes, right, to get it. Yeah, instant music, downloading, Instagram, that's what they're used to. So we have to be appreciating and keeping up with that pace of change through agile leadership. CCL refers to agile leadership. They talk about VUCA. Who's familiar with VUCA? It's a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And that's where the culture of agility, having that strong emotional awareness of how you show up as a leader, what your strengths are, emotionally intelligent leadership becomes key. But I really encourage this mindset of attraction and retention. Yes, we live in Calgary. Yes, oil prices go up and down. And layoffs sometimes need to occur. But let's not be thinking that people are disposable just because we have an influx of new people coming all the time to Calgary. Because there's a cost associated with that. If we retain our staff, they're retaining customer relations, they've got the knowledge of how the business runs, how it could be even better, that's value. So engagement is key. And we also want to be fostering that innovation, drawing that out from our engaged employees. They're more accountable. If it's them that came up with the idea of how to resolve an issue, we've empowered them by removing all the barriers to success, taking away the things that get in their way, they can self-motivate naturally. It improves accountability, and then transparency, again, Blake's going to talk about that piece and how that connects to governance. That's a key piece. So leadership skills now, really about being agile, nimble, resilient, accountable. For some people, you may have a boss in your organization that doesn't fit this criteria. Doesn't mean that you cannot start role modeling it from the middle if that's where your role is. So leaders that are, this is what we're training towards, or what we should be focusing on training towards if you're involved in training programs. Leaders who are strategic, independent, they naturally want to coach people. They're not telling you what to do, they're asking you, how would you start that project? What can you draw on? What are some of your ideas that would get it done quicker, faster, more effectively? They foster risk, they're influential, able to share the passion with the purpose of the organization, and using things like appreciative inquiry. What's working really well? How could it be even better? So for employees, again, this is what we're looking for with that nimble mindset, global, innovative, tech savvy. Who has people on their team that they can go to that always can solve a technical problem? Yeah, there's more of that in the younger generation, thank goodness. But we want them to also be motivated, and we can do that by providing a flexible work environment. So there's some studies done a little while ago. Right Management did a study, and they were looking at, what are the differences between the different generations and focusing on the differences. Well, I looked at it and I said, well, what's the same? They all want flexibility. The younger guys want it because they have a real estate business on the side. The more mature workers want it because they're in that sandwich where they've got older parents they're looking after and they've got young teenagers. So they want flexibility. The people in the middle just want flexibility because it works for everybody. They want to have a chance to work at the office, at home. So that's what we're looking at when we're building this agile, nimble workforce. And work-life balance is a key piece. It's key. David Rock, who's read Your Brain at Work? Yeah. So he says, being always on the technology could actually be like losing a whole night's sleep. So when you were talking earlier about being off the grid, it's actually good.
I'll take your word for it.
When it comes to burnout, these are stats from the conference board. It's costing estimated $12 billion. And this is not North America, these are Canadian numbers. Lost productivity, absenteeism. So it's a big price to pay. And then there was another study I looked at that had some other data. Things that we can actually control and do something about, which is statistics around what causes the stress. So CHC found that 53% of the stress was caused by poor management communications, 42% by increased workload, 36% due to job insecurity and lack of a career path, and then 29% through organizational change and restructuring. So 53%, the biggest portion, it's something that we can control, which is the good news. So what are employees looking for now? Employee engagement, young generations, I've heard that coming up quite a bit. So looking at Daniel Pink's work, he's done a lot of research in that book, Drive, and identified those three pieces: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. When I was working with one of the survey companies, doing some HR work a little while ago, we always had interesting and challenging work as one of the key pieces that came up right at the beginning. But there's much more demand now for it not to be about just money. So that's the third trend. Paying them money alone is not enough. We have to be adding more now. So yes, they want to see that strong connection with the line of sight between what their role is and what's the bigger purpose of the organization. I did a session recently with a client of mine, and we were talking about, yes, it could be just about providing basic bookkeeping services for clients. But what the staff identified was how much more meaningful their job was when they thought about the end result of them doing bookkeeping for their clients, freed their clients up to do the things that they love to do, and they hate doing accounting. So what a valuable service for them to have less stress and be able to spend time with their families because of that service. So it's not, sometimes it's just about repositioning what the actual service does and connecting that with each person. They're also looking for much more in the way of feedback about how they're doing, and trusting and caring managers. So the carrot and the stick method, carrot dangle, do this and you'll get this. Stick, I poke you if you don't do it right. That doesn't work anymore. So what Dan says is we're ready for that next level, kind of like a software upgrade. We're ready for motivation 2.0, and that's what that piece is about. So money's just not enough anymore, but there are other things that we can do.
Just a comment on the feedback point. I work in an organization that is still in the dark ages. I work for an engineering consulting firm. And one of the challenges we have is managers not understanding the value of feedback. We're thinking it's so time consuming because of the generational differences. They always want feedback. They want it every day. I have time to give every day is a comment I hear all the time. Is there a way to give them some hope as managers that they are getting value out of the feedback when the results are over the long term?
Well, it's chicken and egg, and I think Blake is going to talk a little bit about that in his piece. I mean, certainly one solution, that workshop I left a flag for. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is how to bring some of those concepts to life and show that it really is an investment in your people. You can be, as a manager, solving day-to-day issues all day long if people are disgruntled. If they're empowered and they have the autonomy to do their own work in a certain way, looking after the task, the time, technique, the team they work with, they have that autonomy. If they're developing a level of mastery, because they're actually there long enough and they're engaged, you don't have as many problems. And when you ask the person, how would you go about that task, instead of telling them as a manager, which very often busy managers just command and control, they give out instructions like machine gun fire, then the person's more committed and accountable to it because it was their idea, right? So it's looking at it from a whole different ballgame. It is an investment, and I'd say Blake's going to talk about that too. Great question.
Yvonne,
Yes.
is there a role that technology can play to make feedback be a more agile process?
There are a lot of programs out there. When it comes to feedback around performance, there's just thinking like success factors, there's tools like that where you can set up your performance management, and then it doesn't automate the conversation, and it doesn't necessarily train the managers to be more effective, but building a role profile that is directly connected with the purpose of the organization so people can see how the work they do connects, makes the process much more valuable, much more valuable. And it could be a simple spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be a big system, right? A lot of the groups here are maybe smaller, don't want to invest in a huge, complicated system. I have a spreadsheet that I use for role profiling that connects. And it's simple. Yeah. Okay. So basically, my last slide is talking about this work. I started reading Dan Pink's work spring of last year, did a book review on the book, and it connected so well for me with some of the conversations I was hearing that leaders needed in the coaching arena that I decided to get certified to teach material. So in this topic, we've talked about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. There's about 43 elements that actually fit together in this new version, this new 2.0 version of motivation. But in that new operating system, it is about understanding and appreciating what drives us, about the intrinsic and extrinsic behavior, how that connects, talking about the science behind some of these studies. We know that artists are commissioned very often to do work, but their best work comes when they're actually just doing their own thing and they're creating it, not the commissioned pieces. Interesting. I had an experience where somebody actually was wanting to pay me to do a book review. Great, I love doing book reviews. I love reading. I was doing them anyway, on my own. But as soon as I was given a paycheck for it, my motivation just dropped. And I just found I couldn't get going on it. So in the evening, when I would do my reading and then do my book review, it now felt like work because I was being paid. Interesting how psychology works. So it's about connecting these things together, having our employees working in a state of flow because they're doing their best work, they're looking at being masterful in it, so that's something that's never finished. You're never a master of something, there's always a new piece to it. That keeps it intriguing. And that purpose piece is so, so important. So each person knows what their own individual contribution is and how that connects to the bigger purpose. Because that is what will keep people more engaged and motivated. Even if they're not getting as much feedback as they would like, it's still going to be a step in the right direction. So there's 3 trends, and Blake has some additional trends that he's going to be talking about. So,
While we're on
put that in there, you can
I
read the
wanted to-
slides.
because I'm in healthcare, so I kind of assume that most people in healthcare see the purpose of patient care and helping people when they're sick. So outside of healthcare, like in our employee engagement, I would say 53% of our employees are engaged, like engaged employees. How about engagement within industry? Is it higher or lower than that? Do you feel people see the purpose of the organization easily?
Are you even measuring it? Let's
Or
start
are you
there,
measuring
right?
it?
Who's measuring it?
Or maybe you can see when people are at work, are they really at work, or are they just getting their job done and going home?
So that's a very good question that Yvonne posed. Instead of measuring employee satisfaction, who measures employee engagement? I think
Do you want to
there's an
satisfy
answer.
workers? I mean, really, you're not going to get the innovative ideas coming through. And in times like this, we need the innovators. We need to be gathering the employees' ideas. How can we, with the price of oil or whatever your industry is using for that measure, how can we have greater results by being engaged with the employees in dialogue and having them suggesting the innovative ideas and taking ownership of it? Very often they'll run with it. They'll work on it in their free time, in their evenings, because it's interesting and challenging and it was their idea. Right? So we're missing that piece, I think, is really important. And to answer your question, in that one-day workshop, there's actually some examples that are of hand washing in hospitals and messaging in order to increase the hand washing, because it actually wasn't a very good statistic there. And what they did to actually increase the motivation to have that a higher number.
Yeah, we went on that example. I don't know what your example is. I think we went from 23% proper hand washing to something like 80% in our hospital within just a couple of years.
Yeah, with the right messaging, connecting it back to the greater purpose. Yep.
I think that actually we could take a 5-minute break, allowing everybody to refill on coffee, and we'll come right back. Okay? And that allows for a smooth transition. 5 minutes.
And Nicole, I was going to ask you how much time I've got.
All the time in the world.
No, I don't have that.
I'll signal you. No, I'll
Okay.
signal you.
So 20 minutes or so? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, because we are, we're engaging as we go along.
Yeah.
And I'm sure nobody will mind 5 minutes.
Every meeting needs a timekeeper.
I'm the worst timekeeper because I get in rows.
And we're certainly around at the end for
Yes.
one-on-one questions if it's something you didn't want to look at.